Yeah, hello everyone, I'm Luca Ferranti and I will talk about PlutoGrader.jl, which like most of my packages I started when I was on a plane. So I was flying to Graz for the Pluto Dev meetups and I thought that would be like a fun thing to do, and so I wrote it. Just briefly like schedule how this is going to be. So I'll give some brief motivation introduction, like why I wrote it other than being bored on the plane, and I will give a short showcase of like features, workflow, so how use PlutoGrader, what is done for, what are the steps. Give some small details about the internals because I think it uses like a couple of interesting Pluto features that maybe not everyone knows, so would be like a nice to know thing. And finally conclusions. But before we get started, raise your hand if you have ever done some teaching. Present, past, future. Okay. Now sneakily raise your hand if you were forced by your supervisor to do the teaching against your will. Okay, we have a couple of honest people. Okay, then next question, like raise your hand if during your teaching you felt like there was a lot of boilerplate, like too much manual work, and you felt like the process could go smoother, like you felt like some bureaucracy or some technical issues were eating time from your pedagogical aspects. Nice. I wouldn't have understood my question. Last question, what does it mean grading? What is the purpose of grading? Why do we have exams? Why do we have assignments? No. Like ideas. What is the purpose of grading? Why do we give? Yeah, sure.
Maybe make students engage with the contents before the exam happens.
Yeah, so I guess I should repeat for the video. One was make students engage before the exam happen. Yep. Other suggestions?
To punish students who don't pay attention.
Should I repeat that one? Yes. To punish students who don't pay attention. Others? Okay, we have nice ideas. So maybe what is not grading? Grading is definitely not just giving a number to students. That's not the purpose of grading. Grading and assignments in general is part of a learning process, and it's particularly an iterative process. So the idea is that the students start learning, they practice on their own, they read, they listen videos, read from books, whatever, and then at some point they want to measure, but for curiosity they want to understand like how much have they understood, how much have they assimilated the concepts, how much do they know the concepts, and how much can they apply the concepts. So when you learn, there are like different aspects like understanding, remembering, practicing, applying, and so on and so on. And so it's just for the student to know like how much, like what level have they reached, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, where should they work on. So it's like an iterative process where students practice, apply what they have learned, and then they get feedback on it of how it went, like what do they need to work on, and so on and so on. So it's actually an iterative process, and it's part of a learning process. So it's not just this is the number, I'm teacher on Power Trip, and you are this number. That's what it is not. And the idea of PlutoGrader, which is indeed, as was said, heavily inspired of MBGrader, is to help both students and teachers to achieve this iterative process, to help both in making grading and assignments part of the learning process, make it less stressful, less like difficult, less boring, and also remove boilerplate parts for the teachers so that they can focus on the pedagogical part, on the learning part, and don't have to struggle with like technicalities or boring parts. And so, as I said, just a brief shout out about this MBGrader. So, MBGrader is this tool similar to PlutoGrader, except it's like older and more mature, which works in very similar philosophy. And basically, you write assignment as a Jupyter notebook, and then you can automatically grade. You can hide the solutions. You can hide some tests and export exams and so on and so on. And I highly recommend to watch the video from their documentation. That's from 2017, if I remember correctly, when they first announced MBGrader. And the video is very nice, has like a very nice introduction of the motivation of MBGrader, or like the core principles on MBGrader. And it's like most of it also shared from what I'm presenting today. So I highly recommend that video. Now let's get into PlutoGrader workflow and let's see how this works. So first, you can see the workflow in this like diagram, roughly. So first of all, it starts with the teacher writing a notebook with the model solutions. So, okay, also assumption, mainly this is meant for like programming assignments. So in general, like you have programming assignments. So the teacher writes the notebook, writes the exam, the assignment for the student with instructions, model code, and then in this model code has the model solution. Then what PlutoGrader does is that it removes the model solutions. So the teacher writes write a function that does this, this, and that, and then writes the model solution, the body of the function. Then PlutoGrader removes that part so that we get like the assignment text, the assignment sheet to be given to the student without the model solution. That's given to the students, so the text goes to the students, and the students can start to work on it. And PlutoGrader relies on tests, so uses normal Julia test sets with some X additions. And basically, while students work on their assignments, they automatically get feedback because of Pluto super cool reactivity. So they work, they edit the code, they write the functions, and so on. And as they update the code, they see like what tests are failing, what tests are passing, and so they get immediate feedback on how they are doing. Once they're satisfied with their work, they send the notebook back to the teacher, and the teacher can start the grading. So what does it mean to start the grading? We'll get soon in a second, but basically it simply modifies this test set and allow the teacher to give a feedback and store the grade. And the grading can be automatic and or manual. So if you have like test sets, it can automatically compute the grade based on the number of passing tests, but then the teacher can also overwrite that grade. If, for example, the student uses some loopholes, for example, hard codes the answers, then it can be overwritten. And it can also give feedback to that. And yeah, finally, you can export it to PDF, the graded assignment, but that's not me, that's just Pluto that supports that. And finally, the students can reflect on the feedback that they got. So now let's enter step by step into the process. So let's suppose you want to use PlutoGrader to write the exam like how you would do. So here we have a small example. So first step, exam preparation. Write a function which takes a number and multiplies it by 2. And then the teacher writes the function, so the function f, which makes like x to x, so x multiplied by 2. But then you see we have these funky lines like solution starts, solution ends. And now that I heard about this expression explorer, actually that would be probably nicer to use, so that actually might change soon. But basically the teacher at the moment marks the solution between these solution starts and solution ends, which is the same way NBGrader does it. And then writes the test set. And this test set is very similar to how normal Julia test sets work. So add test set, name, and the list of tests. But as you notice, we have an extra word here, exercise score. So in Julia, if you write a word like a type between the add test set and the name, it means that it's like a custom test set. So in Julia, you can extend this abstract test set with your custom test sets. And so this is now a custom test set called exercise score, which really doesn't have much special, except that has like a different printing, so like a more Pluto-friendly and student-friendly printing, and it allows you to set a max score. So these are really the only differences from the normal test set. Yeah, so here is what I just said, that if you want to, when you write the test, you write this test set called exercise score. And nice pro tip is that if you also have like essay questions, so not just programming questions, you can actually create an empty test set and set a maximum score, and then effectively works like as box for grading an essay. So yeah, here was an example of what I just said, that at the test set exercise score, max score 10, so you can give the keyword max score to set the maximum score, and now this is empty, so it can be used to write this essay. Write an essay, explain the meaning of life, will be pretty short, 42, but the maximum score is 10 in this case. Yeah. Then once this is done, the teacher can simply type from the Julia REPL generate assignment of the notebook, and this will create a new notebook where the solutions have been stripped away. So the part between the solution starts, solution ends are removed from the notebook and replaced by missing. And now this can be sent to the student, for example, via Moodle, via email, whatever. And then the student can start working on the assignment. So this is what the generated notebook looks like. And maybe you noticed before that was like test passed with the UP emoji. Now this changed because the model solution has been replaced. So this is what the student sees when they receive the assignment. they see the text, write a function f which takes a number multiplies by 2. The model solution has been replaced by missing, and then the tests are erroring at the beginning because the function is not implemented. So it's failing. And now the students can start working on this assignment, and as I was saying, because Pluto is reactive, while they update the function, while they type in the code, the tests are updated automatically, and so they get immediate feedback. And if the test errors, for example, they can click on the arrow and print the stack trace, or if it fails, they can expand and see like why it was failing, and they can use it to like debug and try to figure out why it's wrong and so on. So for example, there they have to write x times 2, they write x plus 2, one test passes because 2 plus 2 is the same of 2 times 2, so that's funny coincidence. But then one test is failed, and they can see like evaluated to 3, but it's not equal to 2. And if it errors, it can be printed with a stack trace. Future development, there's this very cool PlutoTest.jl, which also has some very cool time machine that allows you to rewind the tests as they're failing. So future integration will be to actually add Pluto tests instead of like hacking manually the whole test set interface, so that students can more interactively like debug with tests and try to figure out how things work. Yeah, so once students are satisfied with the assignment, they submit back to the teacher, for example, via Moodle, via email, whatever. And now the grading starts. And the grading starts with this command from the repo, start grading assignments. And what this will do, this will alter the notebook a bit to prepare it for grading. Particularly what it will do, it will wrap these tests inside a feedback box. So when we start grading, the notebook looks like this. So this is like the same tests that were there before, but now wrapped in this box, where the teacher sees like the automatically computed grade. So this was set to have maximum score of 5. 3 quarters are passing, so that's a 3.75 out of 5. So by default, it displays like the automatic score computed, but then the teacher can overwrite it. So it says, okay, 3.75, let's approximate to 4 because you're an ISO student. So they can type 4, save, and that's stored, persistent. As a nice feature, not bug, actually, you actually need, I realized today, you need to press the save button even if you want to use the automatically computed grade. And if you give a feedback, that's not a problem because you type, then it feels natural to press a save. But if you don't want to give feedback, you say, okay, I'll use the automatic one, then you might forget to press a save and then you don't have the grades. So it's a nice feature, not a bug, because if the teacher doesn't give feedback, then it loses all the grades. So it forces the teacher actually to give a feedback. So probably I will not fix that. But yeah, as I was saying, like you can put grade, you can put feedback, and then you can save it. And that's actually the nice thing, that these are persistent. So it would be, of course, awful if every day you needed to restart grading and update the feedback and redo the grading all the time. So these are actually stored inside the metadata of the cells. So that they are stored inside the notebook, you can post-process, and if you open the notebook 1 year later, they're still there. Step 4 would be like to export the grades, and I'm happy to say that the soon is actually now because I got it working today, and thanks to Alberto for helping me with the JavaScript when I was stuck. So now you can, I mean, it's on my computer, but once I push, you can also export grades. So there will be at the beginning of the notebook a form similar to this, where students can input their student number and name, and similar to this, this is stored persistently inside the notebook. And once that, you can go through the notebook, parse it, and extract the student number, extract the name, extract the grades, and export it as a CSV file. And then once it's a CSV file, you can upload to Moodle. And I think CSV is the most common, but if you common format. But if you know of other formats, I don't know, XML or whatever, OpenInitial would be happy to support more formats. So the soon is today, tomorrow. As I promised, a few details about the internals, like what is going on inside. So how do we achieve the persistency of the grades? So and the feedback, those are stored inside like the metadata of the cell. So if you open the source code of a Pluto notebook, you know this is the cell. And then you see here in these like funny comments with the funny symbol, you have grade and the source grade and the feedback. And whenever they are updated, like so that's the default grade. if you upgrade it, if you update it to different number, it will overwrite it and write a new grade. And similar the feedback, if you change the feedback, it will be stored there. And that's actually why if you don't press save, you lose the grade and the feedback, because if they're not there, they are not stored the first time. So when you first create the notebook, they're not there, and you need to press save once to get there the first time. So if you don't get feedback, if you don't give a feedback, you lose work. Yeah, and that's how it's done. So there's this new function we introduced, I think, last version of Pluto, this get cell metadata and set cell metadata, experimental. So, but it seems to work so far. I mean, what can go wrong if you use experimental functions while grading an assignment of 200 students? So basically, it is JavaScript, so it reads the grading section. So they're stored in this like grading section of the metadata, and then extracts the grade, and by default it uses the autoscore. So autoscore is what is computed from the score based on the number of passing tests, and then writes them to the metadata of the cell. And thanks to Fonts for helping me in Graz to getting this done. Otherwise I wouldn't have got that done. Yeah, and as I was mentioning, an advantage of storing those in the metadata is first of all that you don't lose those every time. So they are there once you have graded once, and they're there, saved. And then you can also post-process, so you can like go through the cells and extract the grading, and for example to export those. So that's also a nice advantage that you can post-process the notebook and extract the cells. Yeah, I guess I was a bit fast maybe. But to wrap up, PlutoGrader was inspired by NBGrader, and the purpose is to make like writing assignments and doing assignments as enjoyable as possible, as less stressful as possible for students. So no, it has emojis, so it's less stressful for students maybe, and remove all the manual work, all like the boring, bureaucratic, so to speak, technical work from students and teachers, so that teachers can focus on designing the pedagogical aspects of the assignment. So design the assignment so that it's as sound as possible from pedagogical perspective. And thanks to Pluto interactivity, students can see immediate feedback of the test, and when work on the test, it can help them like figure out what is wrong or not. And I actually will be using this in my next spring for the class I'm going to teach. So let's see how it goes. Let's see if the students like it or if I got it completely wrong. The whole talk, I'll see. And if you also are crazy enough to guinea pig already, please let me know, and I'm happy to. So this is not released yet, but it's going to be released soon. So I mean, you can still use, because you can git add with the URL, of course, but it's nicer if you can git add with the you know the name. But once it's released and you want a guinea pig and try to use it, do it. And if you have issues, if it doesn't break, if it breaks or something, open issues, and I'm happy to help. Yeah, upcoming features, export grades to SV is actually already there. Other feature is a hidden test. So this is NBGrader, already has it. And you know, sometimes when you make assignments, you don't want to show all the possible tests to the students, so that they're like hidden tests, so that the student can think by themselves. Has to think by themselves, like how to solve some problems. Typical example is in programming is that if you know their algorithm has like some tricky edge cases, you don't test in the public tests those tricky edge cases, and the student has to think by themselves, and then you have the hidden test that tests those. So these are not quite yet there, but they're not too difficult, because you could use, you know, same logic of how you remove the model solutions, and so this is also something that is happening. Something which is a bit more speculative, I haven't thought quite yet like how to approach, but NBGrader also allows you to like write a database of questions, so that if you for some reason want to reuse old questions, exams, I mean, and you don't want to every time make up new questions, you know, have database of questions and assemble automatically the exam from a database of questions. That's maybe a bit more speculative. Oh yeah, and the last slide, not super related, but not unrelated either. As I said, it's nice to remove like all the manual work from teachers, so that teachers can focus on the pedagogical aspects. Then on this theme of less manual work, more pedagogy, there's this computational thinking template on the Julia Pluto GitHub organization, which allows you to build a computational thinking like Julia, website like the computational thinking like Julia without knowing like anything about the internals. So you just read the Pluto notebooks, drop them in the folder, fill a dictionary of informations like basic name of the class, name of the authors, and so on, so on. So fill them in tabular form, and it automatically generates the whole website. And this actually works pretty well, at least if you want like static website. Now there are like a few like corners to smooth to make it as easy as possible, so that like noobs like myself can deploy the stuff and make it interactive also. But it's working. So if you want to build a website like the computational thinking for Julia for the greater good, and now it's easier than ever. And yeah, and PlutoGrader is there. And thank you for listening. And if you have questions, yeah, ask.
Are there questions in the audience?
So how stable is this workflow if students start messing around with the notebook, like if they edit the tests or throw away tests or throw out the order or something like that?
Yeah. Should I repeat the question?
Yeah, please.
So the question was like how student proof is this like workflow, so that or like so asking on behalf of a friend, how could the students mess up the workflow? That was the question. I mean, in my experience, it doesn't matter like how smart teachers try to be. Students will always be smarter. I mean, it's you could, for example, you could mess up a bit, like remove the tests, for example. That you could do.
Change the answer to your answer instead of changing your resolution.
Oh yeah, like you edit the source code of the test. Yeah, but actually I think because I don't know if I implement it, but I think that when I create, like I start the grading, I don't. So I basically extract the cell with the tests, and I don't use like the one from the students notebook, but the one from the original template. And if I haven't actually done that, I should, but that could be fixed at least, so that students cannot mess it. One thing that one thing, but it's a bit more advanced, like how students could mess the workflow. So I'm not sure why actually saying that out loud. Is that at the moment to reinsert the tests with the form, I rely on the UID of the cell. So if the students like delete the cell and recreate it, it has different UID. So I mean not the test, but I mean the this one, the one that they have to edit. If they completely delete it and they recreate or edit the UID, then that could mess up a bit, so could be a bit more robust. So yeah, there are ways, but gonna be more robust, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
Yeah. Did you think about or run into that you want to disallow certain shortcuts in the solution? Right. So Julia has a lot of. Let's say you wanted to teach something on computations, and there might be a package that does exactly that, right? So then you do import package, and then, and then you're done, right?
Yeah. So there are a few. Oh yeah, sorry. So the question is like how to disallow shortcuts in the solution. So there is, for example, this very cool package called the Pluto Teaching Tools, which has like some nice utilities, like to check if there's a function with that name or if there's not a function with that name. So that could be like one first step to check that, for example, doesn't use a function. Then you can check that some packages are not loaded. So let's say in PlutoGrader there's no syntactic sugar to like check that a package is not imported, but that's something that you can do in Julia. So you can have a test to check that this package is not loading or this package is not being used. So that could be a normal test. But yeah, it would be nice to have syntactic sugar because not everyone is familiar with Julia internals. So it's definitely a good one to have.
Okay. Yeah.
So would it be possible to, so let's say I want to teach students how to test stuff. How would I test that they are testing the right thing?
Oh.
Because what I'm currently doing is that then I'm removing the code that they actually wrote to test stuff on code that I wrote.
Yeah, so
Could I replace stuff like this? Is that easy?
I mean, I think everything is possible in a Turing complete language, but how easy? I mean, so you want, so students have to write tests, and how to test that they test the right thing. So maybe off the top of my head, like one way I could approach is that students would write a function which takes like a given input, expected output, whatever, and the function does the test. So the function returns a boolean or returns more metadata, and then you would test that that function returns true for some input or returns false for some outputs. So say, I don't know, you want to the students had to write tests for a sorting algorithm or whatever. They would write a function that takes a list and checks if it's sorted, and then you could test that function in the test set with some random inputs or some inputs, and then could check that. But that's off the top of my head, so maybe there's a better way.
Okay. Any more questions? Yes.
This is slightly off topic, but in the direction of students messing things up. So I was always sort of worried about, students having full shell access when running their scripts.
Sorry, full?
They could run any sort of arbitrary file.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So you could theoretically delete files on your system. So yeah, what I was wondering is whether there's sort of a way to start a Julia session that disables shell access.
Yeah, that's a very good like security point. I'm
Can
not.
you,
Oh yeah, so the question is how to make sure students don't delete don't wipe your whole disk, because if. Oh yeah, Fonts knows the answer.
One time what we did was we rent a server and then you run it from the server.
Hmm.
Also Docker, but it just depends what skills you already have. It's possible, but it's really not possible just with Julia. There's no
Okay. So the answer was locally it's not possible just in Julia, but you could run in a server in a Docker container to like mitigate the risk. Yeah.
One time I saw a presentation of someone who had a similar system, and then he had students submit questions, and then he used natural language processing to cluster them, and so he would give feedback to a cluster of similar answers. And I thought here you could say everyone who wrote the same function G, you could group them together and give feedback together, either because they cheated or because they had similar ideas.
Oh yeah, detect similarities between answers and group them. Yeah, that's interesting.
Can you maybe shortly repeat?
Oh yeah, so the so the question / comment was that there was presentation where someone was using LLMs to like classify answers and see like detect similarities between answers, and could be done something similar that detects, like for example how similar students answered for a G, like student A, B, C, like how similar answers they had for the body of the function G, and then like give a feedback to a group of students, or at least highlight that hey, these 3 students have a very similar answer. So that would be very cool too.
Cool. Then I also have a question. So I can also imagine that for some assignments you want to give some extra tests, but don't give the exact value that the test should evaluate you. So hidden test cases, but at the student side.
Yeah, so you mean that the students can run it, but they cannot. So the students run it, but they don't see what it's doing.
Yeah, exactly. They can only see pass or no pass for certain tests.
Oh yeah. I mean because Pluto is meant to be so transparent and like no hidden states. So it's
maybe you could then hash the answer, and
I mean I can think of a few ways to like reverse engineer that, so it's not super safe. Could be like one first step, like also what Jeff showed, that has like the get field base and then the function sin written as characters, like raw characters. Then yeah, something like that could be done. It's not super difficult to reverse engineer if you know some basic Julia stuff, but then if you can reverse engineer that, I guess you would probably make well in the assignment anyway, so probably. I'm not sure if there's like smarter way to only run the test, but I don't know, maybe if you run on some server and then you send HTTP request to that and then it just produces the output. I don't know. That's one approach I would think, but maybe there's a better way.
Cool. Any more questions? If no more questions, then one big last round of applause, please.